Here with us in studio this morning, Gretchen Quarterman. She is the president of the Lowndes County Democratic Party, and we welcome her this morning. Gretchen, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you coming by. Of course, getting ready for Super Tuesday tomorrow. Most of the Super Tuesday news has been about Republicans, but it is also important for all voters to go to the polls tomorrow.
It certainly is. Democratic voters will only have one thing to vote on, and that's the selection of President Barack Obama. But there's other reasons to go to the polls. If you've moved, you want to make sure that you know where your voting location is and that your voter information is up to date. Also, sometimes at primaries, now not here in Lowndes County, but in other counties, there are other ballot initiatives. They might be voting on East-Splost at the primary. In the summer in the primary, we'll vote on T-Splost. So voting in a primary is very important. Even if there aren't a lot of candidate choices, there sometimes are very important issues. But again, having your voter registration information confirmed and that you know where you vote.
That's very important, and we would take that for granted sometimes. But again, if you have moved or just a change of address and you feel like, well, I know where I'm supposed to be going. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So tomorrow's a good time to make sure that you do know where you're going. So,
in fact, you can look up online on the LowndeSCounty.com website where all the voting precincts are, and you can get the street address if you go to the LowndeSCounty.com website, pick elections, and then voting precincts. 7
until 7 polls will be open tomorrow. Now, at the local level, when it comes to the local party, although obviously that's the only thing on the ballot, you guys don't really have much to do with the national election. Your focus is mainly state and down, correct?
The local parties can only give money to state candidates. We cannot give money to federal candidates. So when people work on elections, we will volunteer to work on President Barack Obama's reelection campaign, and there'll be a special office for that. But the local party focuses on qualifying and electing local Democrats.
Gotcha. Again, we're joined this morning by Gretchen Quarterman. Let's give folks an idea of how those delegates are come about, because obviously the state of Georgia will have the delegates going to the National Democratic Convention. Do we have much to do at the local level to do with that, or how those delegates are selected?
We do, actually. The selection of delegates to the national campaign in Charlotte will happen on April the 21st for Democrats. Democrats across the state will go to their congressional location. So in the 1st Congressional District here in Jack Kingston's district, Democrats will go to Waycross, and we'll meet at the courthouse, and we will elect 3 men and 2 women to go to the convention. In order to qualify, you have to fill in some paperwork and send it to the state Democratic Party by March the 22nd, and paperwork is available on GeorgiaDemocrat.org. If you go to their website, and you're a Democrat and you're interested in going to the convention, you can fill in that paperwork. They will confirm that you are a Democrat, that that's your voting history, and that you have security clearance to be able to go.
There'll be over 100 from Georgia going.
There will. 5 get elected from each of the congressional districts, and then the Democratic State Committee elects another 25. Then we also have National Democratic Committee members who will obviously go, and then also the state committee chairman will go. There are several people from the state committee that automatically are delegates.
Gotcha. Now, of course, we know in the recent past, Republicans have carried the state of Georgia in presidential elections, but when you talk about voting totals in the past, do you have some of that information?
Well, I do. I brought with me a little bit of presidential primary information. Through March 1st, in this presidential primary at our own county, we've had 1,452 people early vote.
Okay.
In 2008, when both parties were fielding candidates and it was an open presidential election, there were 15,323 people voted in the presidential primary. About 8,000 of those were Republicans and 7,000 of them were Democrats. So our county is pretty evenly split.
And who won between Clinton and Obama? Because remember that time 4 years ago, this was a very contested election.
I actually didn't bring with me.
That's okay. I was wondering and I would bet it would probably have been Hillary Clinton, just because, again, at that time, I mean, everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee. And, of course, Barack Obama came on very strong, winning the nomination.
And when Georgia had its primary, that was when John Edwards was just still in. So
yeah.
There were a lot of choices then.
Right.
Now, in 2004, when George W. Bush was the presumed candidate from the Republicans, and they didn't have a choice, in our county, 933 people voted in the presidential Republican primary, and 3,151 Democrats voted. So when your team only has one guy probably your turnout isn't very good. But I do encourage Democrats to go vote, cast their one vote for President Barack Obama in the primary. Know that your voting location is correct, that your information is up to date.
Yeah, we're likely to see that kind of same thing on the other side, simply because what you say, when it's not a contested election, there's not the fire in the belly, I guess, to get out and vote, as you say, but it is still important. And then, of course, we'll see what happens in November. And it's, let's talk a little bit about the history of the Democratic Party, because not just in Georgia, not just in Lowndes County, but all across the South, Democrats, it used to be the party. I mean, there wasn't even hardly any Republicans that would run because they simply couldn't win. And now that has changed over the last, 10, 15 years, although still, as you say, in Lowndes County, it's still pretty even.
Lowndes County is a pretty evenly split county. The Democratic history is to sort of look at what's good for our whole community. That's when you're thinking about what happens in our party. We're looking to see what's the thing we can do that will maximize for all of the people in our community. And sort of my point of view is that Republicans are looking for what's good for me. Is it good for me? Then it's good for me. And I sometimes will have to say, well, maybe this isn't good for me, but if it's good for all of my neighbors, then it's good for me.
Gotcha. The Republicans, of course, the primary tomorrow, Super Tuesday, and then, of course, we have our local elections, and we do have a lot of local elections coming up this year. Quite a long ballot of there are county commission races, there are board of education races, there's a municipal officers election, such as sheriff and coroner, things of that nature. Although we focus a lot on the presidential election right now, coming up in, I guess it's July 31st, I believe, there's quite a long list of local offices. There
are, and the qualifying for both Democrats and Republicans will be May the 23rd. That's a Wednesday, starting at 8 a.m. until noon on Friday, May the 25th. And for all of those local elections, I really encourage people, if you've thought about running for office, that you qualify and take a shot. The things that happen at the local level are the things that really affect us. Where does our water come from? How does our trash get taken away? Are our roads in good condition? Do we have good security? What happens when a tornado comes? What kind of help is the government going to make sure that people who have not suddenly become homeless, what's good for them? Mm-hmm. So the local elections are very important, and I encourage people to run for office.
I've had this argument before with party friends on both sides, both Republicans and Democrats, and the fact that I think with some local elections, it's better to have a nonpartisan election when you're talking about really local offices, because oftentimes people will go to the polls and say, boy, I would like to vote in this primary, but there's a race in this other primary, which I really feel strongly about, and sometimes that freezes them out. Now, party loyalists have told me, no, we have to have a Republican and Democrat. What's your view on that?
I think that issues like sidewalks and sewers are not partisan issues. That's, what's good for our community is good for our community. And the city elections in all the cities are nonpartisan elections, and it's, you go in the fall and you vote, and then the top two get to go to a runoff if one of them didn't get half the votes. So I don't really have a problem with nonpartisan elections as long as people go and vote.
That's right. And hopefully, and usually during a presidential election year, we have a high vote total. It can't ever be high enough to satisfy most of us, I believe. But we do usually have a little bit of a bump in that in presidential election years. And do you see that again this year, probably coming up?
Oh, I definitely do. If you look at the vote history, the people vote the most in the presidential year, the next in the gubernatorial, and the least in municipal elections. And that's sort of sad because municipal elections are the ones that affect people the most.
Exactly.
The other thing that's really important this year is our county commission is adding 2 seats. Last year that made it through the legislature, so there will be 2 new open seats. One of those will be elected for a 2-year term and one for a 4-year term, so that they get onto an even rotation. Also, our county chairman's position is open, and also District 1, the Joyce Evans, and we're hoping that Joyce will run again.
And again, we'll start hearing those announcements in the next coming months from some of our elected officials as to whether they're going to decide to run again. As Gretchen mentioned, qualifying is not until May.
It's late this year.
Yeah.
And the reason that it's late is because of the redistricting. Because that takes a long time to make it through the courts and the justice system. Qualifying is pushed later in the year, so the primary season is quite short this year.
Exactly. And so I'm sure we'll be hearing some announcements. Some of our folks either running for re-election or deciding not to run for re-election, then that seat would, of course, be open. And also, of course, not just locally, but statewide, we have our legislative contingent of all of those will be running for, I assume they're going to be running for re-election. I don't know that for a fact, but their seats will be up for re-election this year. And an interesting time for Democrats because, as we know, Tim Golden and Amy Carter, we're Democrats now have changed to the Republican Party. So are you, when you're searching for possible candidates, do you take an active role in that, or do you just kind of see who comes up?
It's both ways. Sometimes people are really ready. They've been thinking about running for office, and they come to us and say, I'd like to run, and then we help them through the process of all the things they need to do to qualify. And we also actively seek people, that we think would be good representatives of our community.
Gotcha. It'll make for an interesting November, as it always is.
It will. One other thing that's important for Lowndes County residents to know is that right now our county is split between the 1st and 2nd congressional districts. Some of us are represented by Jack Kingston and some by Sanford Bishop. Starting in the fall, when we vote again, some people will vote in the 1st congressional district, those right around the base, sort of where the tornado was,
right,
will again get to vote in the 1st congressional district. But all the rest of us will vote in the 8th. Exactly. So they changed the districts dramatically this year.
They sure did. The 8th currently held by Austin Scott, and
That's
so
correct.
We'll see if Austin or Jack has some competition that's coming up fall. And again, we'll start hearing those announcements, I'm sure, in the next couple of months. So
we sure will.
Very interesting. Hey, as a political junkie, which I'm assuming you are, you're very involved in politics. This is a presidential election year, and we have party elections at the national level, and also a lot of state elections and local elections like we have. It's there's never a dull day. It seems like there's always something coming out.
There is always something going on, and in fact, the Democratic Party in Lowndes County will do a voter registration at the Azalea Festival on Saturday and Sunday. So if you're new to the area or if you moved, please stop by our booth and update your voter registration.
Absolutely, and no matter which party you're voting in, please do get out and cast your ballot. As you say, we've already had how many, Gretchen? How many votes?
1,452.
1,452 in early voting. So we hope to have a big turnout tomorrow as part of Super Tuesday, and we'll see how it goes coming up. If Lowndes County will choose the candidate that Georgia will choose, and if Georgia chooses the candidate that is eventually the Republican nominee, we'll wait and see after. We'll wait and see that in the next couple of months. But we hope we do have a big turnout tomorrow. Gretchen, thanks for your time. We appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.